Hey Nerdpreneurs, couple things about today's Talkin' Nerdy episode. This episode is Frank and I sharing some insights and reflections from our interview with Suetty, Fiddle, the Mimic bookmaker. If you'd like to listen to the original interview, we have a cut-down Chihuahua-sized version available for free. It's episode 6, called Vic the Mimic Maker. For the full 1 hour, 16-minute interview, and all our bigger Doberman-sized episodes of Talkin' Nerdy, go to patreon.com/nerdpreneur and become a member of the
Awesome Nerdpreneur Board.
Now enjoy the episode.
Talking nerdy. We just talking nerdy. With all this talking nerdy. Oh, come on, you wanna
No
talk
squeak
nerdy?
whatsoever. Look at that.
I'm impressed. I am
Right
truly
back.
impressed.
Forward, back, forward.
Does it feel like, I mean, you know that
oil.
you know that feeling when you have a splinter and you finally get it out and you're like, oh, full mobility. Like I assume the splinter's in the hand. And then you're like, yeah, it feels so great. Is it similar? It's like that annoying little feeling is gone.
Yeah, I mean it's kind of, but it's so auditory. It's like when you're around and there's a mosquito and you finally kill it. And you're like, every time you close your eyes, you're about to go to sleep and you hear that whatever it is, it goes right by your ear. That moment happening over and over again when you're trying to kill a bug and then it finally is done.
You know, the audio actually didn't even pick up that annoying sound because Discord knows that it's a really annoying sound.
Yeah, I'll have to put it in post.
Yeah.
Don't worry, I'll add professional mosquito buzz.
Oh God. Yeah, so today we're going to talk about Vic's episode, Suetty Fiddle. Suetty Fiddle. I feel like I have to say it at the front of my mouth.
Suetty.
Suetty.
Yeah.
Suetty Fiddle, kind of, using a bit of a British accent.
I don't know if we spent enough time in the episode on her actual name, Frank.
Yeah.
Maybe we should spend some of this
15
post-show on it
minutes.
too. For those of you who are looking for quick tips and fast changes and transformations, you probably had to wait about 10 or 15 minutes for us to get over the fact we mispronounced her name for the last. Oh man! But anyway,
it was a good story.
Suetty.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that Vic was awesome at was asking a question and her telling a great story or a nice explanation, and her with this like humility that's like apologetic about all of her stories. And I'm like, this is so charming and so pleasant.
British people get away with so much more when they have an accent, and it is one of those things where, like, yeah, she was very charming and delightfully fun, and actually I thought we had a couple of really good, positive, like meritocratic insights that emerged out of that charm that she brought to the podcast. I'm curious, like, I had a couple of things that came to me, but one of the first things I thought of was stumbling into success. Kind of like, she didn't seem to me like the archetype of the business person looking to make a lot of money online, right?
Yeah.
But much more someone who was like, an engineer, curious in some ways to go and say, I want to make this and I'll share. And it took her 3 months to even be able to share that with people on the Instagram. And the fact that it like blew up is just, I don't know, it felt like a really nice story where like the good person wins. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, she definitely, I think that, like you said, stumbling into success, she definitely had a rhythm, and it wasn't like a elaborate plan, like you said, and I can just hear her voice right now. It wasn't like some elaborate plan, and she just consistently made videos, and eventually two of them blew up around the same time. And I think that that's an excellent example. I mean, we've talked about it several times, but just you keep trying, and you understand that there is a grind to it, and eventually something will blow up, and it did for her.
Yeah. I mean, over 30. I have to check and see how many she has now as far as followers on Instagram, but I'm pretty sure she's grown since the last time we talked to her.
Oh yeah. I mean, I whenever she posts a video, I can't help but watch it and then engage and comment. And she doesn't always reply back because, like she was saying, it's hard when you've gotten hundreds of comments. I mean, she doesn't have anybody helping her. I don't think that's changed since we spoke with her.
Except that she's almost doubled in size. 60,000 people now follow her.
What?
60,000 people now follow.
When did we interview her?
When she was around 35 35,
No,
37.
I know that, but I'm trying to think how many months ago. I think that was 3 months ago, 4 months ago that we interviewed her.
Yeah, totally.
Wow.
Things can happen quickly if you're being consistent, right?
Yeah.
And that's the thing that they're really doing on the Instagram consistently, is putting out that content. And it looks like also, yeah, that's awesome. That is so cool.
That's really great.
I guess the thing that also stuck out to me was not only that, you want to follow a thought and kind of see it in the real world. And that was very much the epitome of what they brought to this, Suetty Fiddle, Suetty Fiddle.
Got to say it faster, Chris.
I have to say it faster.
Yeah.
Branding. But I thought that her story was, the following the path that others say is right for a while, and then deciding in a moment of like, that's not what I want. It's not, I don't want to be the software developer who is so wrapped up in, their job that they don't necessarily like what they're doing. But they're enticed by the money, right? And it definitely felt like we got to hear their underlying motivations were more pure than say, oh, I just want to make a lot of money.
Yeah, she definitely wasn't motivated by the money. And she actually, one of the things that, talking about the money reminds me of something that I was really touched by in the interview, and you could probably hear it. But the idea of our own idea of self-worth, and whether our time and energy is worth the dollar amount that we should ask for. I mean, this week has been a tough week, as anyone watching this video version can see. I am in a new apartment, and with a new apartment comes a lot of new changes. And one of the changes has just been realizing that there's a lot in my past and in my childhood that makes sense for why I question whether I am worthy of this kind of stuff, this kind of money, or asking for these kind of things. And without diving too deep into it, because it's going to be a very personal thing for each person, and I don't know what it was for Vic, but for me, it's a lot of just whether we had, I had been recognized for stuff that I had done, and I think that when you finally realize what it is that is kind of where everything comes from, it's kind of like it pulls the supports out from underneath this crippling thing. So the crippling thing kind of tumbles away. And this week I've been having it. So this re-listening to this episode is really interesting for me, because it's been making me recognize, hey, I am actually letting go of that. And then what you talked about, which was from selling knives, you exercised that muscle so much that you've pretty much have been through that experience already, it sounds like.
Well, I think that in some ways, yes, if you're talking specifically about asking people to buy something, that was the specific example in the episode. But I think what you're talking about is more generically like mourning the old self for becoming the new self. And there is an important part of growth that is sort of letting go of past comforts and stepping into something that is new and maybe bigger or grander than what we once saw ourselves potentially doing. And I think that in sales, it forces you to do that pretty quickly. So you get used to the experience of expansion, and believing that, okay, as I get higher in commission or higher in bigger sales, better skills, I make more money. There's this nice feedback loop that rewards it. And so it becomes more comfortable to take that growth journey and also let go of things that don't matter, because everything in sales doesn't matter, really. It's just, you can't take things personally. You have to avoid getting too attached to anything in sales, because crazy stuff happens and people change their minds and you can't change them. And so there's reasons why those skills can be translated into, sometimes, like you said, transitioning to bigger senses of self and being comfortable with that transition.
Yeah, I just want to echo one of the points you said around sales. You can't take it personally. And when I started in my current position, it was some of the most salesy work I'd ever had to do. And now I've transitioned more to the marketing side, which is my natural aptitude. But the sales side of things, it took me a long time to actually not take it personally and to learn what that actually looked like, not taking it personally. Because you say that sentence and it sounds great, but then actually when you call somebody up and you give them a brief pitch, you learn the essence of the pitch, and then you learn what it actually means to give the pitch in many different ways, especially once you start to have rapport with the person that you're talking to. And it becomes actually less about the pitch and more about the relationship, at least in today's sales, or more about the relationship.
It is. It's really important that you're not just, you have to be in tune with the person first before about the product, because you actually, the only way to sell anything really is to make sure that the person that you're trying to sell trusts you and that you have their best interests in mind when you talk to them. As long as they understand that you actually have their best interests in mind, you want the best for them, you're not going to sell them something they don't want, need, or is a ripoff, then you can really, that's what building a client relationship is building trust. So
yeah,
I did want to ask you something.
Hold on. Before we move on from that, I think that that's a common thread with all of the people that we've interviewed, but they don't know it. Some of them don't know why they're succeeding so much in their sales efforts is because they naturally care to engage and help people. They naturally care, so they don't have to put on this front of, let me get to know this person and establish a relationship and then pitch them. They don't worry about that because they already are just helping. And then the people feel cared for, so then they want to make that purchase, that conversion.
Yeah. And this really did, in her story about Kickstarter, it was like so tangibly available for us to look at, because she even said, like, I didn't have any, say, self-confidence in her ability to get funded for the price she was asking. And because other people who were around her were telling her, oh, that's too much money to be charging, she undercharged her own Kickstarter and wound up being unable to fulfill it. But how important is that lesson in some ways? But it's also like that's a thing. We have to look at who is the market, what the value is you bring to that market, and then price ourselves according to that. And we can't shortchange, we shouldn't shortchange ourselves. And by putting yourself in the higher end of market, if you're actually good, that was another important point, but if you're actually good, is smart, because then you're being able to deliver on something where people are expecting a lot. And when they do that, then you create loyalty and you create power and you create, and I have no doubt, like, all of her stuff is top quality. She seems to really care about what it is she's doing. She took a lot of time in her younger years to learn the craft of crafting, to be able to build out cool things at the high quality that she's now charging for them. And so there's a real, I think, synchronicity between principles there that actually winds up leading to people who are savvy buyers wanting to deal with someone like that.
And she delivered that information, I think, or similar points along what you just said, in a very blunt way when she said, not everybody should charge top dollar for what they do. Because in the beginning, you suck at it. And I thought, wow, she said it so bluntly, but with the way she said it, it was so gentle and charming. And I don't know if that's just the accent, but it was such a good point that in the beginning, we do suck a lot at what we do. And trying to charge for that in the beginning is a good experience. I think JJ actually talked really well on this point. Like, you can start trying to sell your services for like something small, like $20, and then gradually you add on a $5 or a $10, which Vic actually also talked about, slowly adding on a little bit more here, and here until she got to 135 quid, she said.
Yeah. And understanding that you have that growth period of, like, not only skill, but also understanding what it really takes out of you to make the thing consistently.
Yeah.
The thing I really dug about this episode was also that I think she really likes what she does from a crafting standpoint. Like, she wanted to be a crafter. And there's a lot of people out there that might look at that and say, and I'm one of these people, this is why I say this, but it's like, wow, you have this great product and you have this great ability to make, say, something high quality. Why don't we build a huge business around this and crank out these mimic books, because you got 60,000 people who could be selling these. And if you could sell one mimic book to every 1,000 people, you could make a ton of money. And then we could get out of mimic books and do other types of things. We could do a whole Suetty Fiddle brand name about making a ton of different D&D props for every single one. And we could theme them on the new release. And I'm thinking all this, and she is not, right? And that was an interesting thing to look at, because if, let's say you're making, you could make like $50,000, let's say, off of doing mimic books and loving the crafting of it, the process of doing it and making all the details and like getting to do the thing you actually like doing, which is making them, right? Let's say, versus, you know, what I'm talking about is, say, making $200,000 a year, but just now you're no longer ever making mimic books. You've delegated all of that. And what you're doing is dealing with headaches on a day-to-day basis of internal delivery dates and trying to figure out how you're going to get more clients to pay all the people you pay. And like, you're building this crazy big thing that maybe you don't even want.
Yeah, I think that it reminds me of it's something, what you're saying is something that we really have to ask ourselves at a certain point. There's two stories, anecdotes that come to mind for me. And one of them is my mother. She was a dermatologist. She retired. And then she started while she was a dermatologist, she started a skincare line. And it all kind of just like started to snowball, and she hired people and hired people. And then towards the end, she was just saying to me, like, I really just want to write blogs. Which is what she started doing in the first place. And that's how she learned that there was a need that people had. So she started to make products. And she really just wanted to get back to the writing. She's like, I hate dealing with the internet side of things. It's so confusing. The website, blah, 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 blah. And she really just wanted to get back to what she really loved. And I think it's easy for people to forget that. And then the second story is actually up in your neck of the woods, Vancouver, that I had this favorite restaurant I would love to go to. Some of the best brunch, massive portions, great prices, delicious food, called Jethro's.
Oh.
Did you ever go?
I've never been to that one. Actually, now I'm going to look it up.
I'm sorry, you won't find it because they closed.
Damn.
And I was so torn. They closed during COVID. And I was so looking forward when I could finally cross the border to go back and visit them, but they closed, and there was no passing off ownership or a different location. They were just closing down. They said, thank you, Vancouver, for the wonderful, however many years it was. We loved it, and we're done. They didn't plan to go big and explode and have multiple locations. They just said, we enjoyed what we did, and we're done now. This was a great thing to do. And I just thought, that is so beautiful, but is so sad that we're now not going to get to enjoy their massive double stacked pancakes.
Yeah. Well, and you know, the nerd version of that is, you're talking about franchises like Firefly versus Star Wars, right? Where, you know, Firefly unfortunately ended, but it ended and we still all kind of love it for being that final thing that had a nice bookend to it, right? It doesn't have to be nerdy stuff. It could be Breaking Bad, right? Like, that ended nicely. No spoilers, but it was a bookend, you know?
Yeah.
Whereas, you know, Star Wars, it's not ending. And we can, and all the people who fondly remembered it as this 1-3 movie set that was nice and bookended and perfect in many, many ways, have been sorely abused over the last 30 years by, you know, Disney and Lucas and all those people who decided to continue to create and create and create and create. And it's an endless stream of revenue for people. So there is an endless stream of ideas and depth, which, to be fair, leads to some interesting things and also some things that wind up being terrible. But I don't know. I don't know which one is better, but I agree that they both have their own perfect value. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah. Depending on the person, it's a highly personal decision. I totally agree.
Yeah.
Well, thank you everyone for listening. This is Talking Nerdy, and we were reviewing episode 6 of season 1, where we interviewed Suetty Fiddle, Vic from Suetty Fiddle, and man, that was great.
Yeah, we were also just talking the shit and discussing whatever we feel like. So, tune in. Life will get better.
Yeah.
Keep it nerdy.
You just finished the tiny Chihuahua-sized version of this Talkin' Nerdy episode with Chris and Frank. If you want to hear the fat Doberman-sized version, become a member of our awesome Nerdpreneur Board. Board members get access to extended versions of all our Nerdpreneur episodes and access to our monthly AMA advice show where Frank and I answer burning hot questions from the internet and give our advice on everything from starting your own nerdy business, tips on dating and relationships, surviving various types of apocalypses, and how to get your unsuspecting friends into Dungeons and Dragons. Go to patreon.com/nerdpreneur to sign up to be a member of our awesome Nerdpreneur Board. It's only $10 a month or less than a Romulan ale to help us turn this nerdy passion project into a full-time nerdy success story. Keep it nerdy.